radio TV phono nut here, and what we have is what's the brand of this thing? Strat-O-Sonic. This is one of the little 5-tube Japanese AM radios that was so popular during the 60s. This style of radio was sold under literally dozens of brand names and in many different colors. They used to be radios that you could find at the swap meet for $1 or $2, but now they're starting to get collectible, especially when they're in good condition and restored. This one doesn't play, but it's in pretty good cosmetic shape. The top of the cabinet is slightly warped, which is fairly common on these because of the tube heat. And one of the little corner pins on the front here is missing, but that's no huge problem. This one's certainly in better shape than some of the other ones I've found. This was an eBay purchase that actually showed up well packed, and I even took the time to write the seller a note and thanked them for packing it well. You know, when somebody does good, I believe in praising them, and when somebody does bad, I believe in holding them accountable for it. And on that note, concerning the busted Webcore record player video, that was starting to go in a direction I didn't really want it to go in. There's too much drama taking place, so I just decided to make the video private. And on that note, I will address a comment or two that was made in that video. The seller of the record player actually chimed in, and the only reason I'm bringing that up is because he offered me a pile of radios to call it a truce, and I told him I didn't want the radios. I just wanted him to do what was right. And then someone else chimed in and said that, well, if he won't take the radios, I'll take the radios. Unlike some people who take quote-unquote donations and then fix them up and sell them on eBay for exorbitant collector prices, I'll actually keep mine and enjoy them. Well, I don't know whether that comment was directed at me or not. I feel like it probably was, but here's the deal. Yes, over the past 30-something years, people have given me a lot of things. That's very true, and I'm always very appreciative of that, but most of this stuff that I have, I bought and paid dearly for, and then spent more money fixing it up. And then whenever I put it on eBay, my main goal is to try to get my investment back, which sometimes doesn't even happen. I'm not one of those like some folks who will do the minimum amount of work to a record player or radio and then stick it on eBay for $350, and then some unsuspecting person buys it. I don't play that way. But you know, bottom line is, whether I buy something or whether somebody gives it to me or whatever, what I do with it is my business. If I give you something, what you do with it is your business. If I'm concerned about what you're going to do with it, then I won't give it to you. Alright, enough of that. Let's look at the radio. I'm told that it's totally dead, so we'll pull the back off and see what we can find. It's very nice of them to give us a schematic diagram, even for a cheap radio that was under $10 back then. They were still nice enough to give you a schematic, which is something you're not going to get with today's junk. In fact, somebody was telling me that they tried to get a schematic for something or another. I don't remember what it was, and the company wrote them back and told them that there's no service information available because we never intended for the product to be serviced in the first place. And I see one problem right out of the gate. The 12BE6 tube is missing. Oh, I'm going to file an item not as described claim. He failed to mention that the tube was missing. No, I'm not going to do that. I know when I buy this stuff that anything is possible. It might be a simple fix. It might end up being a parts unit, but my deal with buying stuff that has to be shipped is, as long as it's packed reasonable, and as long as I get it in the same condition that it was advertised in, physically at least, then you're not going to hear a word out of me. Now, I'm not going to simply pop a 12B6 in here and turn it on, because you see that capacitor across the AC power line? That capacitor loves to explode. So, at the very least, we're going to clip that out of the circuit before we even power this up. The electrolytic filter capacitors in these usually hold up okay. The paper and oil bypass and coupling capacitors, not so much. Now, some of these have disc capacitors in them, but some of them have the leak-o-matic paper and oil capacitors, depending on the age of the radio. Alright, here's the underside of our chassis, and it's a mix of ceramic disc and tubular capacitors, and this is the across-the-line firecracker that I'm fixing to cut out of circuit. Alright, firecracker removed, tube replaced. Let's turn it on and see if it crashes and burns or plays. Do we have any vacuum bulb illumination? I don't think we have. So that could be either an open power switch or an open tube filament. I've seen the power switches open on these before. Seems like the biggest problems with these are the switches / volume controls, the tube sockets getting loose, and this capacitor across the power line. Wait, I guess the tubes are lighting up. I'm hearing some static.
We're listening to it doesn't get any better. Let's send it back now to Lynchburg Radio News. Okay, some good news. During a challenging time for everybody, and this could really help. You may know hundreds of thousands of people.
That pot is very touchy. Oh yeah, and dragging speaker voice calls is another problem with these. But yeah, back to the record player eBay packing video. I don't post videos like that to get drama started or to get any kind of flame war going on. I post videos like that so maybe people who sell this kind of stuff on eBay will see them and get a clue and learn that you can't pack something that way. You have to carefully pack it. And I also do those kind of videos for documentation purposes in case something does go haywire with an eBay claim, and I've got proof to back up everything that took place as far as the condition of the item and all that. Okay, I just sprayed control cleaner in the pot. Hopefully it won't make it worse. I've had some of these that I cleaned, and then you couldn't turn the volume all the way down, and I had to replace the potentiometer. Yeah, this rectifier tube socket is so loose I had to wiggle the tube before it would make
tackle had no containment. Touchdown run for Shedrow Lewis.
Well, apparently we didn't cremate the volume control, and the speaker sounds okay. So.
And 18 scores. They went for 2.
So this should be a straightforward repair, which we'll get it on the bench here shortly and take care of that. Alright, checking this across the line capacitor. It's probably a .047. The markings have worn off of it. That's about what I'm reading on the capacitance meter here. Let's check it for leakage. I think this is probably rated at 400 volts, but much to my surprise, this thing's not showing any leakage at all. But given the application that capacitor's in, it could fail at any time, so probably just going to go ahead and replace it and be done with it. Okay, mail finally showed up a little after 5 p.m. and just to show you how ludicrous shipping charges are today, This box probably weighs 2 pounds at the most. Sent priority mail from California to Mississippi, and it was $20.80. Now, what's funny, the contents of this box and the radio we're currently working on were both mailed from approximately the same location on the same day. Both of them arrived at the same time at the sort facility 90 miles away from my home, but the other radio was the only one that made it here on time. This one sat in the sort facility for about 3 days. Now, you'd think that both of them being priority mail packages from the same place, going to the same destination, would both arrive at the same time, but I guess any organization ran by the government, that's not going to work that way. So let's open this and see what we got. I have no idea how well this is packed, but let's see. Well, it already looks more promising than the record player. Not a big fan of these types of Amazon-style airbags, but I won't complain. It looks like they wrap the contents very generously in bubble wrap, and place some bubble wrap in the bottom of the box, and a piece of bubble wrap just fell out there, so let's unwrap this thing. Alright, they wrap paper around the radio cabinet, which is a good idea to prevent any kind of reaction between the bubble wrap and this kind of plastic here, and that's the way you have to pack things. There has to be, I don't care what the item is, there has to be plenty of padding between the item and the box itself, and then whenever you ship the item or seal the box up to ship the item, there should be no movement around inside the box. It's really not that difficult. And that's the way I generally ship everything, except when I'm shipping half-destroyed record players back to sellers who insist on getting them back before I will receive a refund. And, you know, the way I look at that is, if you ship something to me carelessly and you insist on getting it back before you'll make good on your error, then, you know, I'm not going to go spend my money buying packing material and proper boxing to send a piece of junk back to you. And even if I have any packing material here, which I didn't have at the time, I'm not going to use my packing material that I can use for other things to ship some piece of junk back. Alright, here we go, another Japanese radio. This is a JC Penney set, probably from the early to mid-60s. Cosmetically, it's in very nice shape, and they give us a schematic diagram just like the other one. I bet if I looked at it, it would be the same circuit. Back's in nice shape. The only thing wrong is somebody cut off the power cord, and this is one of the cheater cord style power cords, and those are getting exceedingly hard to find and expensive. I've seen some of them go for anywhere from $20 to $30 for one of these types of cords, and we're not gonna go there. If we have to, we'll just hardwire a new cord on it and be done with it. Well, this one's a little more upscale than the other one. This one uses a printed circuit board chassis and a 4-inch speaker. Looks to be better made, and I think this one actually has an AVC circuit, which the other one doesn't have. And this one has Toshiba branded vacuum tubes in it, and this whole radio could have very well been made by Toshiba. I do know that Toshiba made some televisions for JC Penney back then. The other radio, the cheaper one, has a few Taba branded tubes in it and a Sansei branded filter capacitor, and I'm pretty sure Sansei is who made those little cheapy radios. Alright, we'll button this one back up, and we may dive into it once we get the other one fixed. This may actually turn into a 2 for the price of 1 video. Alright, I got the across the line capacitor replaced. It's not the exact value. This one, I believe, is a .009 or something like that. It's really not critical, In fact, in some cases you don't even need it, but in other cases the absence of this capacitor can cause tunable hum and other interference. So might as well go ahead and put something there. And this is one out of my junk stash. I'm running low on capacitors, so I need to order some capacitor values and some AC safety capacitors. But it's interesting the way the Japanese built this. A lot of the connections, they just laid the wire lead on top of the connection and soldered it, like some of the hack repairs that I see. It's not the ideal way to do it, but given this case and how tiny these tube socket terminals are and how fragile they are, and trying to feed 2 or 3 wires in one small hole, then yeah, I did it just like they did it. Now we're going to check some more things, and that will determine how far I go with this. It's not like this is going to be a radio that I'm going to be listening to all the time, and the main cap that's in danger of blowing up in these is the one I just replaced. So at this point I think I'm going to go ahead and remove the tubes and clean the tube socket pins and retension the tube sockets where they'll make better connection. A Futaba 35W4 made in Japan. And this tube was so loose in the socket that if I shook the chassis hard enough, I think it'd fall out. So we definitely need to squeeze those pins together and clean these tube pins, and so it'll make better connection. The ideal way to repair it would be to change the tube socket, but I'm not doing all that on these. Okay, I just pushed the tube socket pins together with a screwdriver. And what happens is, over the years, with the radio cooling and heating and cooling and heating and cooling and heating, these pins eventually become loose from all the expanding and retracting and expanding and retracting, so I just pushed them back together. They should be okay now. And we'll spray some contact cleaner on the tube pins, reinsert the tube in the socket a few times, and that should make it make better contact. Alright, I'm looking at the control grid of the audio output tube, and you can see what's going on. We have a positive voltage there, 10 to 12 volts, so that capacitor, that coupling capacitor is leaky. It needs to go, or either that or the output tube is gassy. And we should be able to determine that right now. Let's unsolder the grid side of that coupling capacitor and check the DC on the unsoldered side and see what's there. Now this voltage is jumping around. So yeah, I think we need to just go ahead and change out that capacitor. It was kind of warm to the touch whenever I felt it a few seconds ago. Okay, there's our new capacitor, and that got us back to a negative voltage on the control grid. Alright, I got the plate bypass capacitor loose. One end connects to the plate of the audio output tube, the other end connects to the B plus line. Its purpose is for actually a dual purpose, tone compensation, and to prevent any kind of arc over and oscillation taking place inside of the audio output tube. That's why I had the volume turned down. And as you can see, it's jumping around all over the place too, so yeah, I think that cap needs to go. Since this dropping resistor that's really a part of our Pi filter network came loose when I unsoldered that capacitor, we might as well check it. It's a 1K ohm, and on the meter it reads exactly 1.040 K ohms, so we can't get much better than that. Generally, I found these resistors hold up pretty good. It's the capacitors that usually go to crap. Alright, while we got everything loose, I might as well check the electrolytics. First section's reading about 50. It should be 40, so that's not too too terribly far off the mark. Let's check it for leakage. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad at all. Alright, second one reads about the same. Yeah, that's not bad at all. I think I'm gonna leave it in there just to hear everybody holler and throw a fit and tell me how unprofessional I am for leaving the old electrolytic capacitor in the circuit. It's funny, I'm checking these capacitors that I just pulled out, and they're checking perfectly fine on the capacitor tester, which they might have been. This meter might have been doing something wonky. This is an older meter that I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but some digital meters react differently than others to various circuit elements, so I just may need to get used to this meter that I'm using. Here's the other capacitor, and same story with it, so I think we're just about to the point of getting ready to put this radio back in the cabinet and call it a day. And like what happens so many times, we get it back in the cabinet and the stupid thing won't play. They don't never do that out of the cabinet. They wait until you put them back in the cabinet to do something stupid. Well, it looks like wiggling the tubes is doing absolutely nothing. It's like the only section that's working is the audio amplifier. The rest of it is just dead, so what happened? Alright, on the scope, the local oscillator is indeed running, but something's not right here. You notice when I turn the tuning condenser, and you hear it when it pops in the speaker, and then the amplitude of the waveform goes way down. So something is wonky here in the front end, I believe, and I think tomorrow we're going to get our signal tracer and see if we can determine what's going on. I mainly want to see if there's anything at all coming out of that converter stage. I just found something, this resistor coming off of this first IF transformer. Well, actually, it's not a transformer. I'll show you on the schematic what it is. I don't know why all these Japanese radios seem to be this way, but as you can see, the first IF quote-unquote transformer is just an inductor in parallel with a capacitor, and then they're capacitively coupling the converter stage to the first IF stage, and this is basically just a trap to allow only 455, the IF frequency, to pass through and reject everything else. So got to see where this resistor goes. Yeah, this connects to pin 1 of the IF amplifier tube, which is the control grid. So yeah, it stands to reason with this disconnected, broken loose, whatever you want to call it, the radio's not going to play.
Well, it's a short drive within a 30-minute.
Alright, that's better. And now I get it back together and have no filament illumination and no current draw. So now what the heck's wrong with it? WSM very faintly in the rectifier tube had worked its way out of the socket.
Use Le'Veon Bell.
Alright, here's the JC Penney. I'm only playing it at about half line voltage, and it works.
Like we've had every week so far.
It's working remarkably well.
Because they can't be passed by that law that's been passed. Just
Praise 910 AM, WMOG Meridian, and Praise 95.9 FM, W240DY. Meridian's Gospel Connection, Praise 95.9 FM, 910 AM.
Okay, let's check this across the line capacitor. Not getting a very well defined eye opening here, so I bet this thing's leaky as all get out. Yep, pretty bad. So yeah, that one definitely needs to go. Alright, this is not tuned to a station. That's the reason it sounds the way it does, and that's our control grid voltage on the audio output tube, positive 6 volts, so that capacitor's leaky. Alright, we have all of the capacitors replaced. This dual section filter was still in pretty good shape, but I went ahead and changed it anyway, since I'll be more likely to use this radio more often than the little dime store thing. This capacitor here is the coupling cap off of the volume control. This one here is the AVC filter. This one here is the plate to grid coupling cap between the first audio and final output stage. This is the plate bypass capacitor for the audio output tube. And this is the AC line filter capacitor here. The original was 0.047 microfarad. I scrounged around and found a 0.1 microfarad safety cap, so I went ahead and used that. It's not that critical. I went ahead and cleaned the volume control. Now we'll clean up the cabinet a little bit and the circuit board and clean the tube sockets and put this thing back together, and it should be ready to go. Alright, here we are back together. I cleaned it up a little bit. I didn't go hog wild with it. Cleaned up the tube sockets. They're all still in pretty good shape. The rectifier and output tubes are a little loose, but they're still making contact. Alright, before we button it up, let's plug it in and see if it works correct. Okay, and if we're receiving 670 on this, even though it's weak, then I'd say this set is working as it should, because that station is hard to pick up. That's 910, and we often have problems with the oscillation on that frequency, because that's half of 910 is the 455 kilohertz IF frequency.
Without getting somebody to show you how to run it, you shouldn't be buying a pistol without somebody showing you how to run it.
That's 1010.
And the other thing is I'm going to also suggest this.
I don't know how to describe it, but that raspy sound that you hear that's in sync with the modulation, that's something to do with the radio station. It's been that way for several years now.
That's us, gun talk.
But
you will find lots and lots.
I really don't see how that station even stays on the air anymore, even though they've been around for 70 plus years. But I don't imagine they're spending very much money on upkeep unless it's something that just has to be done.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. And so that will be really worthwhile for you.
That would be very cool. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And one other thing.
That staticky sound that's in sync with the modulation, that's what I'm talking about.
You have to call us back and tell us how it's going, okay?
Overmodulated 1390.
Finish to an otherwise great season.
You know, you've been talking about this Washington
1450
team going against the Cowboys. They
sound pretty good, but their signal audio level seems to be a bit on the weak side, and it's that way on all radios. So we go from weak audio on 1450 to overmodulation on 1390 to some raspy, staticky sound in sync with the music. What music? The talk on WMOX, and then 910 doesn't sound the best. And the oscillation that goes along with it doesn't help matters any. So, yeah, that's just the way it is. Not only do we have poor content on AM around here, we have poor sound quality on most of the stations. So even if you had a very high-performing, high-end radio, you know the old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
Well, the question is, where's their record right now? Are they a 2-win football team?
No, they're 2-5. I'm going to count this as a Washington victory.
But yeah, the tubes are branded Toshiba, the IF can and the capacitors are branded Iowa. So I don't know exactly who built this. I'm sure one of those two companies built it. Now, as far as age, it's hard to date these little Japanese-built radios because I've not found any date codes, or at least nothing that I know how to decipher, unlike the American-made sets from this time period. And these Japanese radios often use the same cabinet and same chassis for years. Even the CD markings on the dial remained on the later model sets, even after the USA models, for the most part, discontinued them in about 63 or 4. I guess since the Japanese already had the mold for the knobs and cabinets, they just kept the CD markings in place. Now, somebody on the Antique Radio page on Facebook commented that they received a radio just like this for Christmas of 1966. So this radio could be from 66 or it could be older, but since it had the old wax paper caps, I'm thinking maybe a few years older. I found something on the tubes that suggests possibly 1962, but don't hold me to that. Now I want to remove this old cut-off plug here. And this is not the kind, as you can see, with a little slide-on metal clip. This is the kind that's harder to remove, so I'm just going to slide something under here and cut off these ears, and since we're not going to be saving this. Okay, this cord will fit, but due to the different sizing of the plug, it's impossible for me to use the retainer clip, so this is no longer interlocked. It just plugs in. But that's still better than me having to hardwire a cord to the chassis and then figure out a way to mount it where it won't look tacky. Alright, there we go on the Mumble Gospel Station.
Only for a week. And then they have enough to take care of the demand for the year. And that's the same way they do with a lot of other calibers and
before the Vice President's office says that under CDC criteria, Pence is considered a close contact of his Chief of Staff, Mark Short, but he will not quarantine. Pence has tested negative. World Series Game 5 tonight with LA and Tampa Bay. The Fall Classic all tied at 2 apiece.